Hey, this is Russell Moore, and this is Reading in Exile, and I'm joined with my guest co-host today, who is, tell everybody who you are. Taylor Moore, my son, who is 8, and he's with me today because he's going to help me with some books, because we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of books together, talking about children's books. These are not necessarily the best or indispensable children's books. They're just the children's books that I could pull off the shelf real quick here, and they're ones that kind of matter a lot to us at our family. And before Taylor gives me his stack, these are two that mean a lot to me, because these are two that I had as a kid really, really early. I think this was Parents Magazine that put these together, but they're best loved nursery rhymes. And so, it's all the classic nursery rhymes with just some great illustrations in it. And, I knew this like I knew my own name. And then these are fairy tales. And, it's Aladdin, it's Jack the Giant Killer, which was my favorite in this. Puss in Boots, and just all sorts of Rumpelstiltskin, all sorts of stories in here that I loved as a kid. But here are some that have meant a lot to us as we're here. Taylor, why don't you give us the first one that we can talk about?
Nursery rhymes.
Okay, yes, nursery rhymes, and it's Cecily Parsley Nursery Rhymes by Beatrix Potter. Cecily Parsley lived in a pen and brewed good ale for gentlemen. I didn't really think about it that we're doing nursery rhymes about brewing ale. Not necessarily approve of that, but that's what Cecily Parsley did. And he ran away, at the end of it. All right, what else?
Goodnight Moon.
Goodnight Moon is one that I think almost everybody has. There's an article somewhere. There's a profile in the New Yorker about Margaret Wise Brown, who wrote this. Complicated lady. But also there was an article somewhere, and I'm trying to remember where it is. If I find it, I'll put it in the show notes, about why this book is so rhythmic in terms of just putting kids and their parents to sleep. Goodnight Moon, Goodnight Cow Jumping Over the Moon, Goodnight Mush, Goodnight Brush, Goodnight Nobody. All of that sort of rhythm. And if you really get too analytical with all the images, you think it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it makes sense in terms of the cadence. And so as you can see, this is the one we have worn this out when our kids were little. So what's another one?
Goodnight Gorilla.
Goodnight Gorilla. This is another one, another little board book, kind of similar to Goodnight Moon, about going through the zoo. You can see it is also completely worn out. This is one of the books. Actually, this and this were two that we took to Russia when our oldest sons were there, as we were in the adoption process at a Russian orphanage. And we would get to go spend an hour with them every day, and we would read these two books. And then after we came home.
Where the Wild Things Are.
Oh, and this is one of our favorites, Where the Wild Things Are. A lot of meaning to this book, and I talk about it a little bit in my book, Tempted and Tried, about sort of what's going on here with Max, who's trying to get control of his anger. He's put in timeout. Have you ever been put in timeout before?
No.
You haven't?
I don't think so.
Oh, well, maybe. But he's put in timeout, and he goes to this land of these scary monsters. The important thing is he looks them in the eye and gets control of them and becomes king of all the wild things. I talk about Tempted and Tried, why I think that matters for us.
Owl babies.
Owl babies. And this is going to be a little awkward for my cameraman, my son Samuel, who's about to be 16, because this was a book we read to him when he was really little, and it came with a little baby owl that he thought was a baby penguin and called Pingui, and kept with him all the time until it was just dirty with just dirt and dust and everything else, but loved that little Pingui. It's a cool book, really, really good illustrations, and I like owls too.
The fox went out on a chilly night.
Yep, the fox went out on a chilly night. This is a cool one. Maria knows that I like night scenes, and so she always laughs that I get something to get my attention if it's got stars and moon and a night scene on it. This does. It also has, it's this fox going through and getting geese, but the fox goes back to its den and provides the geese to its babies and wife. It's a cool story, but the illustrations are fantastic. Okay, this is a heavy one. What do we got here?
The Wind in the Willows.
This is The Wind in the Willows, and we got two of them here because I like both of these editions because of the illustrations that are in them. Here's the illustration, actually, of my favorite scene in The Wind in the Willows, which is Badger's house. They go to Mr. Badger's house. He lives underground. And I think what I liked about it as a kid and what I like about it now is I like this sense of, there's a storm going on outside, but there's security within Mr. Badger's house. It's a warm, secure place with tons of storage. So they've got all the food that they need. I'm sure there are all sorts of psychoanalytical ways of looking into that, but I like this story, and the illustrations in these two versions are really, really good. Let me know in the comments what sorts of children's books have meant a lot to you and to your family while we're all in quarantine together. And hey, Taylor, what are we reading together at night right now?
I forgot the name.
But what's it about?
It's about like someone going into a war drill or something.
Someone.
Or like a disease in World War II.
Yeah, not a disease, but it was World War II, and they were quarantined at home, and they are, Lucy is going through that wardrobe into Narnia, and so we're going to be rereading through that tonight. We're only in the first chapter, and so we're going to go a chapter or two each night. So this is Russell Moore. This is Reading in Exile. Let me know what you would like for us to take a look at in the library.